Good afternoon. I'm Bernard Weinstein, Director of the Kean College Oral Testimonies Project of the Holocaust Resource Center. Assisting me is Joan Bang. We welcome Solomon Lasky, a liberator, presently living in...
Pardon me?
Presently living in
Brick,
New Jersey. Mr. Lasky, would you tell us a little bit first about your early life?
Well, I was born in Manhattan at an early age. I shouldn't say that, I'm sorry. In 1913, and went through the school systems up to high school and some college in New York. And then I moved to Jersey. I got married and moved to Jersey in 1937. Right now we're married about 52 years. And I'm permitting my wife to call me by my first name now. I broke down a barrier.
That's all right.
I'm sorry. And,
it breaks the tension.
And then I went to work for the government in 1942 in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And I stayed with them until 1974, gave them the benefit of my abilities until 1974, and then I retired. And I'm living a very happy, retired life with no aggravation, wonderful. Oh, sorry, in 1943 I went into the service. I was inducted into the Army. I wound up in the infantry, 45th Infantry Division, 7th Army. We went all through with part of Italy, France, Germany, and we liberated Dachau concentration camp, April 29th. And then we went into Munich, took Munich the same night, and the war ended there. I stayed in Munich about 3 or 4 weeks, and I received a transfer to military intelligence service. I was stationed in Paris.
Can I backtrack a little bit and ask you what you were doing prior to the war?
Worked for the federal government, Fort Monmouth, as an administrator.
I see.
I went in 42, I got out in 74. About 32 years I was with them.
Yeah.
That included my Army service.
Do you have any recollection being Jewish of what it was like in the early 40s, in the World War II period, to be Jewish in the military? What was some of your
experience? Well, there was quite a bit of anti-Semitism and basic training. I was stationed in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, with the 65th Infantry Division. And there was quite a bit of it there. And,
can you recount any particular incidents that might have...
I don't know if this was strictly because I was Jewish, but we tried to get a ride into town, Hattiesburg, and as soon as they came over to it, they stopped the car, and as soon as they heard a northern accent, they went right by. We were in uniform. They just ignored it completely. I did have a couple of fights in Italy with non-Jews. They're picking on me, some Polish boys. I held my own. I had no trouble.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you go into combat, that was the end. There was no more anti-Semitism. Everybody was for everybody else. They had to depend on you, and they couldn't pick on you, and you had to depend on them. So I think that whole thing became very minimum. And,
had you had any experience, or had you had any knowledge?
A little louder, please.
Had you had any experience or knowledge about what was going on in connection with the Holocaust prior to your being in the service? Had you read about it,
none whatsoever. The first time we saw it was when we hit Dachau. It's the first time I realized anything like that existed. We had absolutely no knowledge. I don't know, it was because of a low rank. I was a PFC. They don't give us much information, but I don't think too many people knew about it. I don't think they even knew about it back home. They may say they did, but I think they're getting their dates mixed up. Because my wife didn't know anything about it either back home. First indication we had is when we walked into Dachau, and we were shocked what we saw. And that's the first indication we had that anything like that was happening in Europe. I mean, we knew we were fighting Germans, protecting ourselves, killing them, trying to save ourselves. We knew all that was going on, but we didn't know that innocent people were being slaughtered the way it was happening in the concentration camps.
Of course, was the Jewish issue covered in the newspapers in the late 30s? Did you know about such things as Kristallnacht, as the things that were happening?
No, I really didn't.
The Nuremberg laws and those things.
I read a lot, but I didn't know anything about that. I knew about that the St. Louis boat that was going back and forth, that I knew. I was following that pretty closely. But in the detail of a concentration camp, I really knew nothing about it. I don't think many people knew. I don't think they know the exact time that they found out. They go back, and when they really didn't know, they're getting their dates mixed up. It's hard to keep your dates straight. And they say, oh, we knew about it, but I don't think they knew about it when they say they did. They must have known about it after the camps were liberated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the majority of the people in the United States knew they existed.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I may be all wrong, but from what I can see, that's what I thought. Because I didn't know when I was in the Army. I knew nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. Walking in, I was shocked to death to see what we saw.
Did you ever wonder, in retrospect, after it was all over, why people didn't know? I'm sure it wasn't just you who didn't know. I'm sure many people.
Well, I don't think the Allies knew. I'm quite sure the Allies knew, but I don't think they wanted to publish it because I don't think they were doing enough to save these people. And they didn't want it to be a black mark on them that they're letting them be killed. I think Roosevelt said he'd want to end the war first. Then we'll see what'll take care of the concentration camp inmates. They had all different objectives, but the objective to save the concentration camp inmates was not one of their objectives. That's my opinion. I mean, I didn't have the intelligence output from the Army, but that's my opinion. I can see what happened. But I didn't know.
Yeah. Before reaching Dachau, where were you in the
I was in Italy a little
European
while, a short
theater?
time, stationed there. Then I went to France and Alsace-Lorraine, all through Alsace-Lorraine. Then we went into Germany, and all through Germany. I went to Nuremberg and Munich, and that, of course, is Dachau. We liberated before we hit Munich. And half of the other towns, I don't know where they were. I mean, you don't even know where you're at. You just wander and wander, and you're out in the field all the time. And yeah, it's a very awful existence. You don't think you'll ever come out of it alive.
So you had
Pardon me, go ahead.
you had entered the service in 1943 then.
1943.
And was that towards the middle of the year, the end of the year?
Towards the end of the year.
Towards the end of the year.
I see, I'd been married for 7 years. So they were taking people, and I was about 30, 31. So they were taking the younger people and those that weren't married. But I'm actually, when they picked me up, and I expected to go in. That's why we delayed having a child. I said to my wife, I'm going to be in the Army. I'm physically fit. I'm not going to try to avoid it. When they call me, I'm going. So let's not have any children. I don't want to leave you with a child. You don't know what's going to happen. Well, we waited. They didn't pick me up, so we had a child. He was about 4 months old, 3 or 4 months old. Got my call. And I'm in the Army. And I went in.
And then it wasn't until, and then were you sent directly to, you were sent to Europe? Whereabouts?
Well, we went to basic training in Mississippi. I came home for a week's furlough and went overseas. And that was the end of it until I got home. And when I got back, he was a grown boy of 2.5 years old, my son. He didn't know me, who I was, or he must have thought I was intruding in the family. Of course, I tried to use a little common sense, and I didn't give him any orders. I didn't instruct him to do anything. I didn't demand anything from him. I just tried to become friendly with him, so he'll accept me in the house. And then finally, it worked its way out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't too soon. It took me a couple of months to work my way out with him, to accept me in the house.
By the time you had entered Germany, you still hadn't heard about any of the concentration camps?
No, I didn't know anything about it.
Where were you at the time of D-Day, at the time of the landings at Normandy?
But D-Day, there was the 6th
Of June.
of June, 1944.
Yeah.
I think I was in Alsace-Lorraine.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember, I think it was Alsace-Lorraine.
Yeah.
Then we had our final push-off from there.
Yeah.
Down the Vosges Mountain, we went into Alsace-Lorraine and down to Nuremberg and Munich and Dachau and Aschaffenburg. I don't know if you know about Aschaffenburg. That was a big city. We had a tremendous battle there. We walked into a trap there. The Patton had said he took the town, the city, and we broke up our outfit and we walked in, just taken. We walked in with half our outfit. He had never touched it. He bypassed it completely. We lost a lot of people there. An awful lot of losses in that particular section. But after that, paid no attention to his reports.
Yeah. You were in which division?
45th.
45th.
Thunderbird Division, part of 7th Army,
Under General Patch.
General Patch.
Yeah.
He died after the war from pneumonia in Paris, short time after the war.
Yeah.
Very conservative, thoughtful commander. He wouldn't risk a man unnecessarily. If he felt we were trapped or we couldn't do it, he'd fall back. Patton would never do that. He would never. He'd go and go. But we took territory 2 or 3 times. We'd fall back when we saw we were outnumbered, and then come back and take it again. I was fortunate to be in his command, truthfully. I felt that. Very fortunate.
So when you entered Dachau, there was nothing that prepared you for what you would discover.
A thing. Honestly, not a thing. I didn't expect anything. I expected soldier against soldier, each defending themselves, and whoever comes out alive survives.
What was your first impression when you got there?
I don't know. All of us, we were so shocked. I'm surprised we didn't go and kill everybody in sight.
What did you see?
Bodies laying all over, men weighing about 50, 60 pounds. Well, they couldn't stand up and talk. They couldn't get up. Just practically nobody there. We caught all the SS troops there and we lined them up. Didn't ask them any questions because our answers were laying right along there on the side and just mowed them right down. First time I ever did that, but you couldn't stop them. Couldn't stop the soldiers. You just lined them up and finished them off.
Were there other Jewish men in your...
Yes, there were a few, not too many. There were a few with us. Yes, there were.
Did you realize immediately when you saw what was going on, though, that this had been an extermination of Jewish people?
Yes, you could. Well, you can tell that the Jewish people, they had a Star of David on their uniforms, so you can pick them out very easily. And I went over to them and spoke to them in my limited Jewish vocabulary. I have a Jewish vocabulary, but I haven't used it in years. I spoke to them, and they told me what was going on there.
What did they say?
Well, they said when they came to camp, they were separated. The men physically fit to work were put in one category, and the women and children, men not physically fit, put in another category. And then they'd work the men until they collapsed. Then they'd lay them to die, or they'd shoot them. When they felt like a little recreation, they'd shoot them for recreation purposes. The soldiers had nothing to do, the guards, so they'd pick them and kill them, because they had to do something.
Were they being starved also?
Oh yeah, they were skin and bones, skin and bones. Absolutely a pitiful sight. We went wild then. That's why we rounded up all the German troops after seeing that and just wiped them out.
Were there non-Jews there as well as Jews?
Yes, there were. But the majority that we saw were Jews. You can see by the Star of David. The non-Jews didn't have a Star of David on them.
Was there any difference in the way they looked physically or the way they appeared to you?
Which ones are you?
The Jews versus the non-Jews.
I really didn't look at it that closely. But they all looked terrible, to tell you the truth. They all looked terrible. The Jews, they weighed 60 pounds. A grown man would weigh 60 pounds. Couldn't stand up, he just sat there. When I spoke to him in Jewish, his eyes lit up a little bit. He expected I was going to beat him up. He saw a uniform. He figured he was going to be either killed or beat up or something else. But anytime he saw a uniform, I guess they were scared. And we were all wearing uniforms, of course. I don't think you can distinguish between the American and the German uniforms at that time. They were so bad mental and physical condition. So I spoke to him in Jewish. I had a limited Jewish vocabulary. I spoke to him, oh, their eyes lit up. You hear a Jewish voice.
They answered you in Jewish too?
Yeah, then they started answering me. Of course, I understood them. I understand. I didn't have the vocabulary.
This was Yiddish, not Hebrew. This was Yiddish you spoke.
Yeah, Yiddish. I don't speak Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yiddish, and they understood me, and their eyes lit up. You can see, I saw a positive reaction. And then they started telling me these things, what was happening in the camp, what they were doing. But of course, we couldn't do anything for them because we weren't medical. We were strictly infantry. And we made a big mistake. We gave them all our food, and they weren't physically fit to digest food. And I think we, unfortunately, killed a few of them. But they couldn't digest it. But we didn't realize. The pleading for food. And I had no medical background. I wasn't in the medic, so we gave them everything we had. We just emptied out whatever we had. We gave them. Wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
How were you feeling about all of this as it was going on?
Oh, we went crazy. The soldiers went crazy. They lined them up and just took care of them. They didn't even hesitate. They really went crazy. And then we insisted we took Munich that night. We only stayed in Dachau 4 hours. We just took the camp, eliminated the German soldiers, and we expected backup troops to take care of the concentration camp inmates, and we took Munich that night. It took about 10 o'clock at night, we took Munich. And the war ended there. But I was in a very bad state of mind. I tell you, I was never so angry and hostile in my life.
Did you see women and children too?
Yeah. When we hit Munich, I was waiting to kill a German. I couldn't wait to find a reason to kill him. See, I wasn't like the German. I couldn't go just kill him for no reason at all. I was looking for a small reason, anything so I'd have a right to kill him.
To justify it.
Yeah, justify, right, that's the proper word, justify it.
This was afterwards?
When I took Munich, the war was still on.
Yes.
Took Munich. And I saw a civilian running up a flight of stairs. He had a camera. I ran up, I pulled him down a flight of stairs, and I asked him for the camera. And if he said no, that would be a reason to kill him. I wanted a reason. I just couldn't kill anybody like that. And I said, I want the camera. And he gave it to me, and I couldn't kill him. I threw it down the sewer. I didn't want the camera. I just wanted the refusal of giving it to me so I could have a reason to kill him.
This was after you saw what you had seen.
I'd seen in Dachau. This is after Dachau. We took Munich after Dachau. Munich is about 15 miles away from Dachau.
Yeah.
So we took Munich the same night. We only stayed in Dachau about 4 or 5 hours. We cleaned out all the troops, and backup troops were supposed to come and take over. The medics and all were supposed to take over. We were the frontline troops. We were about 35, 40 miles ahead of the main body of troops. We were a task force drive. Mm-hmm. We'd go into a town, blow up the town, and go through, and hoping they would come in and take over the town. That they wouldn't take us from the rear. We were just depending on our troops to come in behind and take over the town after we've taken it over.
Yeah.
And if there's any lights on in the house in the town we took, it would blow down all the houses because we figured that'd be a signal to the Germans to bombard that area.
So until the time you actually saw Dachau, you believed that the Germans were fighting a kind of conventional warfare?
Yes. Absolutely.
And that they observed military rules of...
you had the breakthrough,
Saint-Lô? You mean at Saint-Lô?
Yeah. And they were shooting them in the back, shooting the American soldiers in the back there. They were shooting, they weren't taking prisoners, they were just killing them. So luckily, I wasn't in that area. I was in the southern part of Germany at that time. But we couldn't do that. I couldn't shoot anybody in the back. We couldn't do that. See?
Yeah. When you came upon Dachau, then, it was in the morning or the afternoon?
It was sometime in the morning.
And
I think it was in the morning. I don't remember distinctly, actually. You're a little confused with time element.
And you came upon this with your troops, and you had no idea what it was?
Not at all until we saw these people. I mean, they were skeletons. I mean, there was nothing there. They couldn't stand up. Most of them were half dead. I don't know if they ever survived. I mean, it was pretty obvious what was happening. I didn't have to ask them any questions. I mean, you can see. That's why I spoke to them in my limited Jewish vocabulary, gave them a little relief. They figured they had a friend here, see, an ally or something. I mean, because the Germans wouldn't talk to them like that. They either hit him with the butt of the gun or shoot him or do something to him. But we spoke to him, we gave him our food. So they figured we were friendly, and they realized that I was Jewish when I spoke to them. And when they realized we were the American Army, they knew the American Army was coming, but they didn't know how close we were. So we were about 30, 40 miles ahead of the main body of troops. So I think we caught the SS troops there by surprise. That's my opinion, because we barged into Dachau, and the main body of troops were behind us. We were spearheading a task force. The task force is out in front, and the spearhead is out in front of the task force. About 14 miles. Our biggest fear was that the Germans would cut in behind us between that 40-mile break behind us. See, that was our biggest fear.
You said you saw children.
Yeah.
How did they react to you?
They had no reaction. I mean, we really didn't concentrate on any particular thing. When we helped the ones that we saw, we went back and took care of the SS troops and the guards there. And then we organized them and got together. We went into Munich.
You also saw bodies.
Laying all over, bodies piled in freight cars.
Was there an attempt to bury the bodies or to do anything?
I don't know what they were going to do with those bodies. Mm-hmm. And I was told that they were trying to take every able-bodied concentration camp inmate, making a march with them, ahead of them, out of Dachau before we came in. See, but we seem to have caught them in the process.
You mean until the very last moment that you were coming in, they
Yeah.
were still taking them
They were
out to be
taking them
killed?
out, marching them out, and they were dying on the way from what I was told. On the marches out, they were down because they were, most of them weren't in any physical condition to march at all. I mean,
Did you see any of the interior of the camp?
not too much. We didn't wander around. I didn't wander around. We knew that they had the ovens there, and they had I saw the box cars with the loader with the bodies, and that's why we went crazy. And then it's looking at the inmates, and my God, you just couldn't. If you were human, you had to react that way. I mean, you just had to. All lying there, with their mouths open, their eyes sunken way in, adults weighing 60 pounds. I mean, it has quite an effect on you. I mean, the Americans were not that type of soldier, that they'd slaughter people unnecessarily. And they never expected to see anything like this, a death camp. And they saw that, the religion went right out the window with the soldiers, had no bearing on it at all. They all felt the same way.
You think this was a universal kind of reaction?
I'm more than sure it was. I'm quite sure it was.
Were your commanding officers trying to keep any kind of order, or?
Well, I didn't see them. We didn't see them, truthfully. I was just with the troops, and we talked them into it. Actually, that we wanted to take Munich that night. We took Munich. We may end the war sooner, and they wanted to bombard, prepare for an invasion of a big city. But we convinced them, without any bombardment. We took Munich. There was no resistance at all. We walked into Munich and just took it. It took about 10 o'clock at night.
Dachau is very close to Munich.
Yeah, about 15 miles away from Dachau. From Munich.
Do you think the German civilians living in the environs of Dachau knew about the camp?
You could smell the death to Munich, about 12 or 14 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And when I asked them if they knew anything, they said they didn't. I was tempted to shoot them. So they absolutely knew what was going on. They were taking over their houses. The inmates were taken out. They took over the house, took over their property, took over everything. They knew what was going on. Absolutely. And the smell from Dachau reached Munich without any trouble.
You could still smell it when you went into
Oh, there was
Munich
death all
that
over the
night.
place. I mean, the bodies were rotting there. I mean, the ones about 50, 60 pounds. There was nothing to them. All you saw was bones. It was a horrible sight, and we went wild. I mean, normally I don't think we would have reacted that way. It was just a normal taking of a city. But when we saw that, boy, because I never gunned anybody down like that before.
Was there any kind of formal interrogation of the civilians going on? Was there anything?
Well, we weren't involved in that end of
You
it.
weren't
We were
involved.
strictly combat troops.
Uh-huh.
There's a rear echelon that come up and take care of that end of it, with the interrogations and medical care and everything else. We were not. We were strictly a combat outfit. We were just out to take territory and try to end the war as fast as possible.
How long were you in Munich?
In Munich, I was in Munich about 4 weeks. I was transferred to military intelligence service in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And I was glad to get out of Munich, to tell you the truth. They put me in military intelligence service in Paris. And they started giving me, they told me if I stayed with them, they would give me a raise in rank. I was a PFC when the war ended. Every month they'd give me a raise in rank if I stayed with because it was an insult to their outfit to have a PFC. PFCs, most of them were tech sergeants. And here I'm coming in as a PFC. But to tell you the truth, I couldn't stand it. I just couldn't stand the inactivity. I couldn't sit at a desk after combat. Sit down for 5 minutes, go out and walk up and down. Sit down I didn't have, I don't know what word you want to use, but I just couldn't sit still. I had to be moving. So I transferred out after a month. I couldn't take it. They gave me a T5 in the first month. They were going to take me up at least to a tech sergeant, they told me. Every month they'd raise my rating. I left. I transferred out.
Was part of the reason you were asked to go into military intelligence because of the fact that you had been in on the liberation at Dachau?
No, I just got a transfer. A friend of mine worked with that outfit.
Was there any discussion among the soldiers, or particularly among the Jewish members in your unit, after you had seen what happened at Dachau?
No, I mean, it was so bitter. They still had a water fight. We were still fighting. And went into Munich, and we took Munich, and you can find there were a lot of concentration camp inmates that got out of the camp and were hiding in cellars in Munich. So we liberated them and told them they were free to do what they but they had no place to go. We hoped that some other outfit would come and take care of them, because we were strictly an infantry outfit.
So at the time you sort of submerged your feelings. You didn't say anything or try to think about it or anything. Is that accurate?
At what point is that?
Right after Dachau.
Oh, I felt terrible. I mean, I couldn't get over it. And when I wound with military intelligence, I couldn't sit still. I mean, I just couldn't sit. I used to go in and sit down at the desk and walk around there. Nobody stopped me because I just couldn't sit. The tension was still there.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. You couldn't believe what was going on. I mean, to walk into a concentration camp unexpected and to see everything, you wouldn't believe that a human being could do that to another human being.
Mm-hmm.
I had a family. I mean, you just couldn't imagine what would happen. And everybody went wild, the non-Jews as well as the Jews. It affected the whole bunch. And we've all been in combat. We've seen a lot of death and destruction. We've seen friends killed. But this was worse than anything we had ever seen.
But immediately afterwards, there was no talk about it, as though people were...
No, nobody spoke about it. I came home, nobody discussed anything. I never told anybody about it, about what we saw in the camp. I told them we were liberated, but I didn't tell them the full details of it. I told my wife, she's the only one I told. And I didn't think that anybody believed me if I told them, because it hadn't been publicized yet. But later on, it was, they started to publicize what went on in the concentration camps, and people started to know about it. I started to talk a little more openly, telling them what I saw, and they wouldn't think I was crazy. I mean, because who would believe that if you hadn't seen it?
Do you happen to remember when you saw your first accounts of these things in the press, in the American press, either the military press or the regular press?
Well, we had a Sergeant Stripes, and we didn't get much of that. In the infantry, you're a low echelon, and nobody pays any attention to you. You're just cannon fodder. Mm-hmm. That's all. You throw you out, and you survive fine. Get killed, we'll send somebody else up. Take our objective, and so we'll lose 40,000 men. They would estimate what they would lose before you went into combat. In this encounter, we would lose 30,000 men, but you don't count it all. You're just a number. So.
And how long after you were back in the United States and settled in your life did you really start to understand the impact of what this had been on your life?
It took me a long time. It really did. It took me a long time. When I went back to work at Fort Monmouth. I worked there before in the service. I couldn't sit at my desk for 6 months. I was tensed up. Every time a plane went overhead, I had to hold myself back from diving under the desk. Figuring you're going to get a strafing or bombing. And I fought it for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm. You think
Nobody bothered me. They just let me go my own way when I first came back to work. Nobody bothered me.
You went back to the same job?
Yeah.
That you were doing before?
And I held myself back from dying under the desk when a plane went overhead. You're afraid you're going to be bombed. And I finally got out of it. I finally worked my way out of it.
Yeah.
It took me a good 6 months after the war ended.
Did this have anything to do directly with Dachau, or did you feel that was a normal kind of reaction to have?
Mostly Dachau. Mostly Dachau. To see what they can do to a human being, it was unbelievable. All you see is skin and bones there. That's all they were, just skin and bones. Like that, and they couldn't stand up, and they worked until they dropped. And then to pass on, they used to shoot them or pick on them. And that was this God's way of doing things. They had nothing to do, so they pick on them. They had them at a disadvantage. They had the guns, and they were half dead anyway. So they big bullies. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Did you have relatives at all, or did you still have ancestors in Europe at that time?
Not that I know of. Nope.
Or your wife, or?
No. My father had a brother, but he was in England. Mm. And that's all we knew. Yeah. I had a cousin in France. I didn't know her, of course. Most of our family were back in the States. And I got a I got a 5-day pass to Paris. We had lost 500 men one night in a trap, so they pulled us off the lines. That's the expression we used. We came off the lines, and they had a pass to Paris. And I told them I'd like to have a pass to Paris because my sister was in Paris. She was an army nurse. She was in the war a long time, too. So I said I'd like to get to Paris and see my sister because I didn't think I was going to survive the war. I mean, we're going back into combat, and I said, this will be my last chance to see anybody in my family, and I'd like to get the pass. So I fought for the pass, and they gave me a 5-day pass. It was a truckload going to Paris, and I went to Paris, and I saw my sister, and she had found a cousin of ours that was she was a French woman. Her husband was taken away and killed. And she survived it, so I saw her, and that was the only two relatives I knew were there. Of course, my sister was in the army, so she was an army nurse. She was a lieutenant. And of course, we couldn't be seen walking together. There was no fraternization with officers. That was a PFC. I just ignored that. Good thing they took my gun away when I went on the pass. So I'm really, if anybody stopped me, they're going to tell me in Paris when I'm in combat what I can do. You want to tell me, come up to combat and tell me. Don't tell me back in the back lines.
This other relative who was a survivor, did she come to the United States?
She came later to the United States. Yes, she did. Married in the United States, and then her husband died and she died. Yes, she came to the United States.
Yeah.
Never saw her first husband. I mean, they just picked him up and he was finished. She never saw him again.
So for many years you never discussed this experience that you had had. You say you had told your wife. Had you told your sons?
Well, they were a little young when I got back. See, my son was 2.5, and I had another son 2 years later. But I was telling them about them. When they thought they could understand, I told them about them. I impressed my older son quite a bit with it. I wanted to know what went on. My younger son, too.
How did they react?
Well, my older son talks about it yet. That I told him, some of the things I told him. They're both attorneys, both my sons are attorneys.
What made you open up generally about what you saw? Were there any experiences that you had that...
Well, I tell you the truth, when they called me down for the scroll for being a liberator, and it all started to come out, and people were questioning me, say, what happened, where were you, why'd you get this and all. Then I started to open up and tell them what was happening. And I started to tell, then felt I could tell everybody what happened.
How did they happen to find you in the first place?
Who?
Whoever it was who was giving you the scroll, whoever it was.
Well, there was an article in the Jewish War Veterans. I belong to the Jewish War Veterans, and they said if anybody liberated a camp, they'd like to know who it was, say. So I said to my wife, what should I do? She says, oh, tell them. They want to know. Tell them what you did. So I wrote back and told them the outfit I was in, where I had been, the area I had covered with the Army, and then they wrote back and told me they're going to give me a scroll for being a liberator. That was the thing. So when I went to that to the synagogue, and they told me they had the scroll for me, I told them to send it to me because I didn't want to go publicly, but they had it for me there, and that's what first indication that people knew that what I had done. So nobody knew. They knew I was in the Army. That was the end of it. What I had done or where I had been, nobody had any idea.
How did this belated recognition make you feel? You know, when they gave you this.
I felt pretty good that I got some recognition. They give me something, proved that I was in combat. I had done something. I had accomplished something. I felt I had saved some lives. I had been instrumental in saving some lives. And I felt pretty good about a little recognition. So in the meantime, I had received 2 Bronze Stars in combat. In the meantime, thing.
When
They wanted to give me a formal presentation with the Bronze Stars in front of a review. I worked for Paul Monmouth. They wanted to have a review, and I said no. Just send it to me.
When you received the scroll and you started to begin to talk about your experiences, did that cause any trauma to you in remembering that, or?
No, it didn't, because I've been thinking about it so long. I mean, it was always on my mind. I've been thinking about it all the time. And it really, I tell you what, I felt better bringing it out in the open. I really, relieved me. I felt better bringing it out. Because I kept this in me, and my wife knew she's the only one that I told.
Did you ever have dreams or anything about
Nope.
it?
No. Nope, I did not.
Mm.
Nope, but I didn't. Well, during combat, I didn't know I was going to survive, of course. So we lived the day to day. Day to day we used to live. My wife would get my letters 2 or 3 weeks after, and she didn't know I was still alive. And then Eisenhower went into a new thing, and he was reporting where the outfits were in combat. And he was reporting that. So they were reporting my outfit. We were trapped in this town we went into. My wife knew where I was at that time. I was trapped. She didn't know if I got out alive or not, because no way of letting her know. And on the drive, the last drive, for 6 weeks, I didn't get any mail, and they didn't pick up any of my mail to take in. We were too far ahead of the main body of troops. And the only food we got is what we took from the Germans. We made them feed us.
You told us a story earlier before we started filming. What about meeting a survivor from Dachau?
Oh, yeah. Well, I got a call from one of the synagogues in Lakewood, and they asked me if I was going to attend the Holocaust program, that Holocaust program. So I said, yes, what are you calling me for? I mean, well, I don't know you. Oh, please come down, we'd like to see you. So I said, I'll be there anyway, what do you call me? So I go down there, and I went over to him, and he introduced me to a senator. I said, what's all this fuss about? What is all this about? He says, we got the scroll to present to you. I said, what scroll? He says, a scroll that, the Holocaust scroll. I said, fine. He says, come on, sit up in the stage with us, and I'll introduce you. I said, no, I'll sit in the audience. I'm not a public person. I don't want to sit up there. So when it came to me, he got up and he said I had a scroll they were going to present to me. And I said, fine. He says, yeah, I'll have to wait a little while because I have to have it inscribed and all. He says, if anybody, he said, Mr. Lasky doesn't know whether it was April 28th or 29th, the actual day they liberated Dachau. And if anybody was in Dachau and would like to talk to him, he'd be glad to speak to them. He says, would you speak? I said, sure. I didn't expect anybody. And I'm walking out, and a couple comes over to me and says, Mr. Lasky? I said, yes. He says, it was April 29th that Dachau was liberated. I said, how do you know? He says, I was there. He says, you saved my life. He was with his wife. And you know, I couldn't speak for about 5 minutes. I was so taken back. My wife was there. She started to cry. Get emotional again.
It's okay.
It's okay.
So they went away, but that was an awful experience. At least I saw somebody that I saved. See?
Was this somebody you recognized from there? Was it somebody you'd given food to? Was it somebody you talked to?
Nobody. He didn't know. He just at the one when he presented the scroll to me, he says, Mr. Lasky liberated Dachau, one of the liberators, and he doesn't know whether it was April 28th or 29th.
Mm.
But if there's anybody in the audience that was in Dachau, said, Mr. Lasky would like to speak to them. We'd be glad to speak to them. And they came over to me and they said, we were in Dachau at that time when you liberated it. It was April 29th. I was so overcome I couldn't say anything. Really, tears came to my eyes. I saw actually somebody I had saved, because you kill so many people, they have to know one from another in combat. There was somebody I'd actually seen that I had saved, 2 people.
That was the first time you had ever experienced that then, since you had actually been at Dachau. Have you remained in contact with those people?
No, they're in Lakewood. I used to speak to them occasionally, but I think they want to distance themselves from the whole experience. And they don't want to be reminded too often. That's my opinion. Whenever I call them, if I need anything, sometimes I need a few things. But it's my opinion that they just want to forget as much as possible, not have it on their mind. And so I really don't contact them for that reason. I feel that they don't want to be reminded constantly of Dachau, their experiences.
How did the experience of it change you as a person?
Well, I appreciated life more. And I realized that there was a lot of anti-Semitism in this country, and something should be done about it. I myself couldn't do it, because all Germany was willing to kill all the people. I mean, the country was willing to wipe out a whole race. I felt a lot of things should be done to straighten this out, but I, as an individual in my position, I couldn't do anything like that. But it affected me very badly to see when I saw those people there. It's terrible. I mean, one human being to do that to another human being, it's really unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I know that you're here right now talking to us, but have you continued doing this?
Pardon me?
I know that you're here right now
Yeah.
speaking with us about it, but have you continued on a pretty regular basis talking
Well,
about
look,
these
my
things?
first experience of talking, I think I told you out there, I got a call from a college, college up in North Jersey. I was near the college. And
I think you said Somerset. Was it
Somerset County College,
Somerset
right.
County, yeah.
And Steve Kaufman, who was, he handles the Holocaust program there. And he called me up. I didn't know the man from Adam, and I didn't think anybody knew I was a survivor. I was a liberator, you know. Called me up. He says, Mr. Lasky? I said, yes. He says, my name is Steve Kaufman. I said, doesn't mean a thing to me. Who are you? What do you want? He says, well, I'm handling the Holocaust program. I'm at Somerset County College. I'd like to have you come up and speak. I said, not me. I'd never spoken in my life at that point. I said, no, you got the wrong man. I said, I prefer not to because I think I'd embarrass you if I get up there to speak because I'm not a speaker. He says, you got to come up here. So I said, okay, all right, I'll come up, I said. So he says, what are you going to do? He says, can you come up and just talk without a speech? I said, no, I'm not an accomplished speaker. I never speak. I said, I'll write up a little speech. And if that's all right with you, if not, forget the whole thing, because I'm not a qualified speaker. I'm not a seasoned speaker. I used to run various things in the government, various classes I used to run, but this wasn't my category at all. He said, all right, write up a speech and come up. So I went up there and I made a speech. And my wife said it was very good. I mean, she would say that. She was there. But everybody came over to me at the end of the speech and thanked me. So I said, maybe I wasn't so bad after all. So he sent me a copy of the speech. And it wasn't too bad. It was pretty good. It was a lengthy speech, and the question and answer period was much longer than the speech. People were all involved, and really they were very much involved. And that was my first experience on talking about this.
Do you remember the kinds of questions people asked you? And did these questions come mostly from students or from...
Well, there were students in there and there were adults.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, I really don't remember what my reaction when I walked in, when I knew they were Jews, what my reaction was. I said it would have been the same reaction to anybody, Jew or non-Jew, to see them in that condition. It would affect me the same way. I mean, and what did I do when I saw that? Well, my speech, I told them that we eliminated them and took care of them, and they didn't speak to anybody after that. Neither didn't do anything again. They were eliminated, and various questions like that. And some of them get up and make speeches, you know, without a question. So they took up a lot of your time. They talk for hours until somebody stopped them.
When you spoke there, or when you speak generally, do you encounter hostility from people, or do you encounter...
No, I didn't encounter hostility up there.
Negativity?
No, they were, but the question then got the repetition. They'd ask me a question one way, and somebody else would ask me the same question another way. I said, I just answered that question. It's the same question, see? And it was a nice, lengthy program, and I was well satisfied with the way I presented. That was the first time I ever spoke in front of anybody, you know. So I was well satisfied with my performance. Didn't expect an Academy Award, but I thought I had accomplished something and presented my thoughts clearly that they understood what I was talking about. On the way out, an awful lot of people came over to me and shook my hand and thanked me, and I said to my wife on the way out, maybe I came across pretty well. She said, you did. You came across very well. So I was a little happy with my performance.
Do you feel as you go on doing it that it's easier to talk each time?
Well, you were at the one in
Brookdale.
I don't know how I sounded. Did you
Sounded
hear me?
good. You sounded good to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's the first time I spoke without notes. I always have a little speech for me, and I vary it a little bit to meet certain occasions. And then I got a call from this Central Regional High School in South Jersey to come down and talk to the students. And I went down there, and I had 2 full days I was talking there. I spoke to 8 classes, spoke to the auditorium. I didn't want to speak to the auditorium, I just wanted to close things, but I spoke to the auditorium. And I got a very positive response, and the teacher there said, do you mind if I ask a question? No. She says, how many Jews in the class? not one. When any Jews in the whole class, all the classes. About 5 blacks and the rest were non-Jews. I was a little surprised, but it didn't bother me. I said I can talk to them as well as anybody else. And I spoke to them, told them what I had seen, what I had gone through, my emotions. And we had a question and answer period, and they were very good. They were answering questions. One little girl asked me, did I need psychiatric treatment when I got home? I thought that was very brilliant. I mean, I thought it was a very good question. I said, no, fortunately, I have a pretty strong character, and I was able to overcome that. But I said a lot of men did have to go into therapy after that to straighten themselves out. And I got a lot of questions and answers, and it was, tell you the truth, I was glad I went.
Did you know, by the way, some personally who did have to go into...
Pardon me?
Did you know any men personally who had to go into psychiatric or some kind of therapeutic?
No, but I had heard. Because I didn't keep in contact with any of my Army buddies. Because in the Army, you're in combat, you try not to make close association because you may not be there long. So you try to keep it separated. And you usually, you bunk with one man all the time. You dig the foxholes together. But you don't make a close association. Because it's just a limited time. I mean, there's no sure thing that you're going to come out of it alive.
So the pain of having that separation is greater than not having the association to begin with, is what you're saying. You have children. Do you have grandchildren as well?
Yes, I have 5 grandchildren.
And have you been able to share your experiences with them?
The older ones that did. And the older children, but the one in up here in North Jersey, my son doesn't want me to tell him anything. One is 10. He says, I don't, and the other one's only 2. So I said, okay, I won't tell him anything. But the other ones I told. And they're adjusted to it. They know what I did because I sent them a copy of the speech to my son. I made a copy of the speech. I sent it to him. And I sent him a copy of the scroll he has up there that they sent me. And they know about it, but the ones up here don't know. They're too young. But my other boys, they'll be 16. The set of twins, and the other one is 18 in Florida. And they understand pretty thoroughly what it was all about. Matter of fact, a set of twins, and the younger one, she must have been about 6 or 7, had to write an essay, and she wrote about what I did in the Army, that I freed all the prisoners in the whole Army. She was about 6 years old. She went on in that, and on in the last thing she wrote, and Mr. Lasky is my grandfather. It's a cute little thing. She's only about 7 or 8. We framed it. It was a cute little thing she sent to us.
How do you feel when you hear the revisionists talk about...
The what?
The revisionists, the ones who say it didn't...
It's ridiculous.
Didn't happen, or it was exaggerated.
It's ridiculous. There's so much proof that it happened. It's ridiculous. Anybody listen to them? There's so much proof. You have all the war pictures. You have the survivors. You have the combat troops. I mean, it's a lot of nonsense. Anybody that believes them is ridiculous. I mean, there's so much proof that it took place. Well, so many casualties in the war. I mean, I don't know how they can go as far as they can. I don't get anybody to believe them. I don't understand, because the public knows what took place by now. In the beginning, they didn't, because we didn't speak about it. The combat troops didn't speak about it. Nobody spoke about it. But now it's been out in the open for years, and they know what took place. They see pictures of the concentration camps. They see them going into the furnaces. People have seen all that. How can they deny it? Anybody that denies it is ridiculous. It's impossible to deny anything like that.
Why do you think they get so much credibility?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to philosophize on it, but people have a certain hatred for certain religions, and they don't want to show that anything was done to these religions unnecessarily. They want to show that they're as severe as they are, So they say it didn't take place. But those people know that it took place. And if they had anything to do with it, they would have gone further. They knew it took place. But they just don't want to admit it, and they figured by saying this, maybe a lot of people believe them. And a lot of people do believe them. The people that want to believe them, they're just looking for a reason to believe them, and they have it. They say it didn't take place. Fine, it didn't take place. It didn't take place. I heard it on TV. It didn't take place. And that's what they're doing. But I got on TV and I said it did take place. The only reason I'm talking, I'm not a speaker, I'm not comfortable, but I'm talking because I want to refute those statements. I'm an eyewitness. I want to prove to them that it took place. And what took place. And either maybe they'll believe me instead of believe them. Here I get my point across. Because I'm a living witness that it took place.
Do you personally feel a sense of release or relief when you speak about these things now?
Yes, now it is, yes. I had a bottle up for a long time. The only one, as I say, I knew it was my wife. And I told her because I knew she'd believe me. Then when it started to come out more and more, and I started to come out more and more, and a lot of the boys started to come out and talk about it, you feel a little better. You want the public to know what took place. Because the public really didn't know. They were living a sheltered life here. I mean, so they heard a few stories, they watched a few things on TV. It didn't affect them directly. I mean, still people were killed, but they're still watching TV here. So why should that bother them too much? But if he saw that, it would affect him. But most of them didn't. I went in, I was fairly old when I went into the Army. I was 31. That's old for the Army, and old for the infantry. I was one of the oldest ones in my outfit. But it didn't bother me because I was in very good physical condition. I was an athletics slut all my life. I was playing handball, and I was playing softball in big league teams. When I went into the Army, I was physically fit. Fortunately for me, I was physically fit. And I could withstand whatever they wanted to give me. I had a sergeant in basic training. I had to dig a hole for him. He was only 21 years old. He used to collapse after a march. I had to dig a hole for him. I was 31. But I was always in athletics all my life. So my physical condition was very good. And it didn't bother me the hardships I had to go through. That I could survive without any trouble. As long as I don't get hit with a bullet, I'm all right. And I was fortunate that I wasn't shot. But physically, I could have gone on for another year at least. And I was in my 30s already. Most of the boys there was 21, 20, 22. I was the old granddaddy of the Army. But I was in good physical condition. I was playing a lot of handball, a lot of softball. I mean, my whole life was in athletics prior to the Army.
If there is a message that you could leave about this experience that you have had, what would it be?
Well, it's possible if you could eliminate discrimination for anything, any race, any religion, it should be halted right in the beginning. And the people shouldn't believe everything they hear unless they have proof.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lasky.
Thank you.